Hey everyone, Dan here. We are just after market close on Monday, April 5th, and wanted to take a look at a bunch of new stocks today and a couple that we briefly covered before. Wanted to check in on those. Before we get started, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. As you may know by now, I put out videos 6 days a week, so no videos on Saturday, but every other day I'm putting out videos, sometimes multiples. But you know, that way you'll find out when all of them are published by subscribing. Okay, let's get right into it. So AMAT has been on a tear. It started this channel back on March 18th and has done a really good job maintaining this lower bound of the channel, and now has worked itself up to the upper bound of the channel, which it hadn't done really since like March 22nd. So nice to see it back up there, just sort of like reconfirming the upper bound of the channel. What I'm going to be looking for now, because I'm not currently in AMAT, is for it to work itself down into this green box, which represents, you know, in the next day or so, it represents like the lower half of the channel. And then for Wednesday, it represents testing the bottom bound of the channel. So if we get an entry point in here, to me, that'll be a good opportunity for a dip buy starter position. And then, you know, especially if we bounce off the bottom bound again and head up, that will sort of like offer another dip buying opportunity if you want to average down. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm wondering if it's going to come down to fill this gap is the other thing. And if it does, you know, obviously that would push it out of the channel. But if that happens, what I would look for it to do is come down, fill that gap, and then pretty quickly come up and start to sort of try to re-enter the channel, or at least turn the bottom bound of the channel into resistance. You know, looking back on it, I mean, it has filled some gaps before. The thing of it is, you know, if it is a gap filler, there is this one way down here too. What I'm sort of hoping for is, you know, I would rather it just hold the channel, because to me it's a cleaner way to play any stock, is to just buy at the bottom of the channel and then sell out at the top of the channel, rinse and repeat. So that would be my ideal scenario, but we'll see. If it does start to come down and fill these gaps, like this would be the first one, that may sort of indicate that that's what's happening, and will at least then give us some kind of direction as to where it may be going, which may even mean that it heads down here into the high 120s. But we'll see. I'd be happy with this for the time being if it, you know, shows some ability to hold the bottom bound of the channel again. OCG, you know, this one has a ton of upside potential. As you see, it sort of had this wild run up, and then it took a breath, and then it tried to push up again, and it did a pretty good job. But then since then, you know, it's been taking several breaths. So the question now is, you know, does it have more gas in the tank to try to push upward again? What I'm going to be looking for in the charts, let me just see. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I was going to make a correct statement there. None of the stocks that we're covering today are stocks that I have positions in, because most of them are relatively new to me. So I'm just sort of discovering them as I'm presenting them to you. So, but what I'm going to be looking for in this one is basically, you know, it's done such a good job of holding this 751 level that I would absolutely expect that to be the case. If I did have a position and it dipped below there and turned 751 into resistance, then I would consider that my cut loss. I would look for a good dip buying opportunity in this green box, because you know, I think now that it's risen up a price target above this level, that if it retraces down to this 809 level, it'll be representing sort of all of this support that should be gained from previous price action. So I would look for it to hold that 809. There's always the chance that it falls sort of just below the price target and then sort of quickly regains its footing there. So that's why the dip buy box goes a little bit below. But you know, you just kind of want to wait and see what it's doing at that level. And if it's showing its ability to hold and then start to bounce off of the area, then to me that's sort of like the good starting to recover entry point that I'd be looking for. The one hazard that I would say, you know, if it does come down into here and you do take a position, is this pretty oppressive downtrend that it's been in since about March 22nd. And this is like not the perfect trend line, obviously, because you know, there was this like spike up here, so I just allowed it to get caught into there. It could, you know, this could be the last peak, and it could be coming down a little sharper like that and cutting through here. So that would be the only other thing, to see if it's able to break this downtrend. To me, that would be a really good indication as well that it's on the road to recovery, or it's at least going to make another run up like we saw back here. YVR. YVR is in, I know this is a little bit wonky of a channel, but it captured so much of the price action that it felt sort of irresponsible not to draw in the channel and just sort of say, you know, this might be developing. Because sometimes when something like this happens, like as you see, this big push up here, this happened all after hours. And then, you know, it had some spikiness as that market day opened, but then it quickly fell off and it tried to bounce off the upper bound of this channel and then fell back into it. So that's me just sort of saying, like, I'm not going to ignore the channel that otherwise holds up really well just because there was basically like 24 hours of activity happening outside of it. You know, the indication there could be that like this was just a big overreaction and that's why it retraced all the way back down, or, you know, that there is some potential for it to rise back into this area again, but it's going to have to get there in a more systematic way. So that's why I'm looking at the channel now. Long time hold of this bottom bound. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to bore you with scrolling back, but, you know, this is the end of February over through here, so it's been holding that the whole time. And then now that it's back in here, it retested the bottom bound of it again, which is cool after like leaving it up here. So, and it held really well there. So what I'd be looking for now is potentially a dip buy area here. What I would be cautious of, which is why it's yellow, is this zone here, just because of all of this topping out and all of this price activity. It would be good to see it be able to establish a support zone above this yellow line. But, you know, it could certainly kind of get stuck there a little bit again. It may not be the end of the world as long as it continues to hold the bottom bound of this channel. So these are my dip buy areas in the coming days that I'm going to keep an eye out for. Cautionary zone, and then otherwise it's just, to me, play the channel. Buy toward the bottom of the channel, sell it, you know, toward the top of the channel, or at least toward the top half of the channel. SLGG is, you know, in this one, it does have this sort of like orange uptrend that it's kind of starting to form. This was back on March 8th, and now it's just sort of retested that area and had this wild ride in between. So what I'm wondering is if that can continue to act as a floor to SLGG. It's a weird way to get a trend line, and we've seen these before, and sometimes they hold up and sometimes they don't. It's not the cleanest, but the other, you know, good thing is that there is this downward trend line that is going to be intersecting with the upward trend line. So we may very well see pretty soon, this would be sort of by end of day tomorrow, which is going to win out. But, you know, I didn't draw in specifically dip buy zones because to me, it's just basically a buy if it continues to hold this orange trend line support. And but I would maybe be very cautious with this white downtrend to see what happens when it hits there. So for me, I may wait to see what happens before I consider taking a position. The other thing is there's so much previous buying here. I'm a little bit concerned that it couldn't hold that level. Basically, it had used that support up so many times, and that's just sort of one of the instances where it went to the well too many times, if you will. And used up all of the buying pressure that was there, and so now it's fallen down below that area, which to me is not a great sign. So I think it needs to reestablish that as support as soon as possible in order to have some sort of show of strength to proceed with. SURF, Surface Oncology. So it's not the company you think it is when you just see SURF. But this one is starting to develop potentially a very infant upward trend support. It's just a few days old, so we'll see if it actually holds. The thing that may be happening here that I'm looking for is if this gap needs to be filled from the bottom up, which I don't know how much of this really, the overlap that this green candle has is really just from the wick. So to me, the volume probably wasn't there to sufficiently fill this gap, which is what my bullish hope would be. And so if that's the case, what I'd be looking for it to do is potentially come back down, test this orange trendline support, which would give me a dip buy entry as it starts to establish price strength off of that. And then I'd be looking for it to come up and work itself into this green box, which would be, for me, potentially like a take profit area. So be a pretty quick in and out sort of price movement wise. And but it would be because, it had come through to fill the gap, and then who knows what happens after that. It could come back down and test this again, but, or if for some reason that gives it a lot of hype, a lot of momentum, it could continue up. If it does make its way past there, and I'm still holding a position, that 1920 is probably where I would say I want to pull my cautionary take profit and just sort of lock it in, just because SURF does have a lot of this erratic activity, and it's not necessarily the slow and steady type, at least from the most recent price action. It's a lot of downtrending activity here. So there's been a lot of downward pressure. I think it's still trying to stabilize. So I'm just looking to catch a portion of the stabilization and play off of maybe a shorter term uptrend. CPNG has had an exciting young life. So it looks like it just formed on this day and launched on the NYSE and pretty quickly sold off, worked itself into this channel actually on March 17th and has been holding the channel ever since, batting itself around between, about 50 down to about 41. So, to me this is interesting because I think there's like a pretty good price target here at 53. If it can continue to hold this channel, that would be what I'd be looking for, aside from just the typical like buy at the bottom of the channel, sell at the top of the channel. And the other thing that's interesting to me right now is we're really quickly going to see here if it holds the bottom of this channel. And if it does, that to me would be a really good dip buying opportunity. And I, like I said, would be pretty interested in scooping it up there and then riding up toward the top of the channel, whether that reaches 53 or not. But that's what I'd be looking for in the coming days. BOXL, which we did cover before, and I turned this, so this is the channel that in the original video we were looking at. Let me just make it yellow. I was just trying to differentiate the old from the new, but that was the channel that we had at the time, and you see that held for quite some time. That was from beginning of March, and then it left that channel seemingly for good on March 29th, so a really good, I guess almost 4-week hold. But now it's started to form this new channel, which is about 1, 2, 3, 4 trading days old, and it's definitely toward the lower end of it. So if this continues to kind of move sideways, which I don't know if it will, but it would put it toward the bottom of the channel during the day tomorrow, and certainly on open on Wednesday. So to me, that might be a good opportunity for a dip buy and then ride it to the top of the purple channel here. Like I said, I left this old channel in just to say, this has proven channel play ability in the recent past, and so that's why I very quickly spotted this new channel and thought it might be a good opportunity to exploit for dip buying at the bottom of the channel, taking profit at the top of the channel. So we'll keep an eye on BOXL. And then JFIN, which we also had previously put out a standalone video on, it's not been able to like work itself out of this downtrend line here, but it has held up incredibly well at this 757 level, which we drew in at my original video, and it's continued to hold there. My worry obviously becomes what happens when this downward trend collides with that 757. In other words, it's already gone to the well, like we talked about earlier in the video, so many times that does it just have no more buying pressure there to sort of work itself through by the time this trend line pushes the price down there again. So we'll see. You know, its initial job will be to hold that even just by open tomorrow. But if it can break through this downtrend, you know, obviously there's a decent amount of upside here. You know, I'd be sort of a little cautious in this area here if it does get that high. I mean, you already would have made a really good profit, especially if you're buying in the areas that we're looking at. But there is a lot of topping outs in this area. But there's, you know, a lot of topping out that's going to be reached with all of these price targets leading up to there. But you know, that's something to look for on JFIN. So this one I'd be a little bit more cautious on for my own personal account strategy, but we'll see what happens. We're just a few days away if it does continue to maintain itself within this flag here. All right, well, that'll do it for this video. I hope everyone had a good start to their trading week, and no matter what you're trading, I wish you the best of luck. Hopefully this video gave you some ideas. Feel free to share these. That helps a lot as well, not just liking and subscribing, but sharing these out helps a ton, and I certainly appreciate it. Okay, well, have a good evening, and I will catch you all tomorrow, and see you in the next video.